The emergency alarm pierced through Summit Financial Tower like a scream in the night. 32 floors above the bustling streets of Denver, Rachel Thompson found herself staring at the gleaming elevator doors that had just sealed her fate. The pristine chrome surface reflected her terrified expression as the luxury elevator car shuddered to a complete stop, suspended between the 29th and 30th floors with no warning, no explanation, just the sudden suffocating silence that follows mechanical failure. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her manicured fingers trembled as she pressed the emergency button. Repeatedly, each press becoming more desperate than the last. The soft chime that usually announced her arrival at James's executive floor had been replaced by an ominous mechanical grinding that seemed to echo from somewhere deep within the building's steel bones. Rachel's breath came in short, shallow gasps as claustrophobia began wrapping around her throat like invisible hands. She was supposed to surprise her husband with lunch from his favorite restaurant, a gesture of reconciliation after their latest argument about his endless work schedule and her growing sense of isolation in their perfect but empty marriage. The Italian takeout from Romano's sat cooling in its expensive packaging on the elevator floor, the aroma of truffle pasta now mixing with the metallic scent of fear and mechanical oil. Rachel Thompson had never experienced genuine fear in her 35 years of carefully orchestrated existence. Born into Denver's social elite and married into even greater wealth, her life had been a seamless progression of private schools, charity galas, and perfectly appointed homes where every detail was managed by someone else. Fear was something that happened to other people, those who couldn't afford the security systems, personal trainers, and financial buffers that insulated her from life's sharper edges. Standing in her Louboutin heels and wearing a cream-colored Armani blazer that cost more than most people's monthly rent, Rachel represented everything that money could buy and privilege could protect. Her honey blonde hair was styled in the vile, effortless waves that actually required 2 hours and $300 at Denver's most exclusive salon every Tuesday morning. The tennis bracelet adorning her wrist caught the elevator's LED lighting, each diamond representing an anniversary gift from James, though she could barely remember which milestone each stone commemorated. Yet beneath this polished exterior lived a woman who had slowly been disappearing into the role she was expected to play. Rachel's days followed a predictable rhythm of yoga classes at the country club, charity committee meetings where she wrote checks but rarely spoke, and solitary dinners in their Cherry Hills mansion while James worked late into the night. She had traded her college dreams of becoming a teacher for the security of marrying James Thompson, CEO of Summit Financial, and somewhere along the way, she had forgotten who she was underneath all the designer clothing and social expectations. The elevator's emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie amber glow, making the familiar space feel alien and threatening. Rachel's phone showed no signal, the corporate building's steel and concrete construction, creating a dead zone that left her completely cut off from the outside world. She could hear the distant hum of the building's ventilation system, but it felt impossibly far away, as if she had been transported to some parallel dimension where help couldn't reach her. Meanwhile, 32 floors below in the building's basement maintenance office, Mike Rodriguez was completing his daily inspection checklist with the methodical precision of someone who understood that other people's safety depended on his attention to detail. His weathered hands moved efficiently across control panels and monitoring systems, checking everything from water pressure to electrical loads, ensuring that Summit Financial Tower continued operating as the seamless corporate machine its occupants expected. Mike's uniform bore the simple name tag that identified him as building maintenance, but it couldn't capture the complexity of his actual responsibilities or the depth of knowledge required to keep a modern skyscraper functioning properly. He monitored heating and cooling systems that regulated temperature across 40 floors, maintained elevators that transported hundreds of people daily, and troubleshot everything from plumbing emergencies to sophisticated security systems that protected millions of dollars in assets. At 32 years old, Mike had been working at Summit Financial for nearly 4 years, ever since Sophia's mother had passed away, and he needed the stability of steady employment with decent health insurance. The job paid enough to cover their modest apartment in Aurora, Sophia's school supplies, and the occasional dinner out that made his 7-year-old daughter feel like they were living normally despite their limited budget. He took pride in his work, understanding that his diligence kept hundreds of people safe and comfortable, even though most of them had never noticed his existence. His day had started at 5:30 that morning with Sophia's breakfast and the careful ritual of braiding her dark hair while she ate cereal and chattered about the art project she was working on at school. Sofia Rodriguez possessed an artistic gift that amazed everyone who encountered her creations, producing drawings and paintings that seemed impossibly sophisticated for someone her age. Her bedroom walls were covered with landscapes that captured Colorado's mountain beauty with stunning accuracy, portraits of neighbors that revealed emotional depth beyond her years, and abstract pieces that expressed feelings she couldn't yet articulate in words. Mike's radio crackled to life with a static-filled transmission from the building's security desk. Emergency in elevator car 7, mechanical failure between floors 29 and 30, passenger trapped inside. The routine nature of the dispatcher's voice couldn't mask the urgency underlying the situation, and Mike felt his stomach drop as he realized someone's safety now depended entirely on his expertise and quick thinking. Mike Rodriguez moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had trained for exactly this type of emergency countless times, though he had never faced a real trapped passenger situation during his 4 years at Summit Financial Tower. His hands flew across the elevator monitoring system, pulling up diagnostic screens that displayed the mechanical status of all 40 elevator cars throughout the building. Elevator 7 showed critical errors across multiple systems. The safety brakes had engaged automatically when sensors detected an irregularity in the cable tension, leaving the car suspended in a precarious position that required immediate and careful intervention. The technical readouts painted a complex picture of mechanical failure that would have overwhelmed most people, but Mike's years of experience allowed him to quickly identify the root cause and formulate a rescue plan. The primary cable had developed a dangerous fray that triggered the building's sophisticated safety systems, but the backup systems were functioning properly, meaning the passenger was secure for now, though potentially panicking in the confined space. Mike grabbed his emergency toolkit, a comprehensive collection of specialized instruments that he had assembled and maintained with obsessive care, knowing that in situations like this, having the right tool could mean the difference between a successful rescue and a tragic outcome. His first priority was establishing communication with whoever was trapped inside Elevator 7. The intercom system had failed along with the main power, but Mike had learned to improvise solutions using the building's internal phone network. He connected his portable communication device to the elevator shaft's emergency line, hoping to reach the frightened passenger and provide reassurance while he worked on the mechanical solution. The connection established with a crackling buzz, and Mike heard the unmistakable sound of someone breathing heavily, clearly terrified by their situation. Rachel Thompson heard Mike's voice emerge from somewhere near the elevator ceiling, calm and professional despite the gravity of their shared crisis. "Ma'am, this is Mike from building maintenance. I know you're scared, but I need you to stay as calm as possible while I get you out of there. Can you tell me your name and if you're injured in any way?" His voice carried the kind of steady reassurance that comes from genuine competence rather than empty promises, and Rachel felt some of her panic beginning to subside as she realized that someone knowledgeable was working on her rescue. "I'm Rachel Thompson," she managed to say, her voice trembling but growing stronger as she focused on responding to his questions. "I don't think I'm hurt, but the elevator just stopped suddenly and I can't get the doors open." The emergency button isn't working, and my phone has no signal. How long will it take to get me out?" Her fear was evident in every word, but Mike could hear her attempting to maintain composure, which would make the rescue process significantly easier and safer for both of them. Mike began explaining the technical situation in terms that Rachel could understand without overwhelming her with mechanical details that might increase her anxiety. The cable had experienced some wear that triggered the safety systems, but the elevator car was secure and stable while he worked on the solution. He would need approximately 30 to 45 minutes to manually reset the systems and carefully lower the car to the nearest floor where she could exit safely. Most importantly, she was never in any real danger of falling, as the building's safety systems were designed with multiple redundancies, specifically to prevent such catastrophes. As Mike worked in the cramped elevator shaft, his headlamp illuminating the complex machinery that kept Summit Financial Tower's vertical transportation system functioning, he found himself thinking about Sophia and how proud she would be when he told her about rescuing someone who was scared and needed help. Sophia often drew pictures of superheroes flying through the sky or saving people from dangerous situations, and Mike realized that in her eyes, his work as a building maintenance technician probably seemed pretty heroic, even though most days it involved mundane tasks like changing light bulbs and unclogging drains. The physical demands of working in the elevator shaft were considerable, requiring Mike to maneuver through tight spaces while maintaining perfect balance and handling tools with absolute precision. One small mistake could cause the very accident that the safety systems were designed to prevent, so every movement had to be calculated and deliberate. The shaft was hot and airless, filled with the mechanical sounds of pulleys, cables, and motors that created a symphony of industrial noise echoing through the building's steel skeleton. Rachel found herself talking to Mike through the communication system, partly to distract herself from the claustrophobic situation, and partly because his calm presence somehow made her feel less alone in the suspended metal box. She told him about surprising her husband with lunch, about feeling foolish for being so frightened by what was probably a routine mechanical problem, and about her complete ignorance regarding how elevators actually worked. Mike responded with patience and humor, explaining some of the engineering principles behind modern elevator systems while keeping her informed about his progress. The conversation revealed aspects of both their personalities that rarely emerged in their normal daily routines. Rachel discovered that she enjoyed Mike's straightforward way of communicating, his lack of pretension, and his obvious pride in understanding complex systems that most people took for granted.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Mike found himself impressed by Rachel's intelligence and her genuine interest in learning about his work, even while dealing with her own fear and discomfort. As the minutes passed, Mike made steady progress through the methodical process of manually resetting the elevator's safety systems and preparing to slowly lower the car to the 29th floor. The work required him to coordinate with the building's central control system while simultaneously making physical adjustments to the mechanical components in the shaft. His years of experience had taught him to work efficiently under pressure, but he never allowed urgency to compromise safety protocols that existed for good reasons. Rachel began to feel more confident as Mike's regular updates demonstrated his competence and professionalism. She found herself asking questions about his work, his training, and even his life outside the building, discovering that he was a single father raising a daughter who loved art and seemed to inherit her father's attention to detail in her creative projects. The conversation helped distract her from the confined space and gave her something positive to focus on instead of imagining worst-case scenarios. The rescue operation was proceeding smoothly when Mike encountered an unexpected complication that would test his problem-solving abilities and force him to improvise beyond his standard training. One of the secondary safety cables had become tangled around a support beam, creating additional resistance that prevented the normal reset procedure from working properly. This meant he would need to physically untangle the cable while maintaining his position in the shaft, a delicate operation that required both technical skill and considerable physical strength. Mike explained the new situation to Rachel, emphasizing that it would add time to the rescue but didn't create any additional danger. He needed to climb higher in the shaft to reach the tangled cable, which would temporarily interrupt their communication, but he would re-establish contact as soon as he completed the necessary adjustments. Rachel felt her anxiety spike again at the prospect of losing their connection, but she understood the necessity and tried to prepare herself mentally for several minutes of silence while Mike worked above her position. Working alone in the elevator shaft's upper reaches, Mike reflected on how this emergency was unlike anything he had handled before, not because of its technical complexity, but because of the human connection he had established with the person he was rescuing. Usually his work involved fixing problems that affected people indirectly, maintaining systems that supported their comfort and safety without them ever knowing his name or face. This direct interaction with someone whose immediate welfare depended on his expertise created a different kind of responsibility that felt both challenging and meaningful in ways he was still processing. Mike Rodriguez had learned about responsibility the hard way, through circumstances that would have broken many men, but had instead forged him into someone who understood the weight of other people depending on him. 3 years earlier, when Sofia was only 4 years old, his wife Maria had been diagnosed with leukemia during what should have been a routine checkup. The doctors had spoken in careful medical terminology about treatment options and survival statistics, but Mike had heard only the fear in Maria's voice and seen the confusion in Sofia's dark eyes as their stable world suddenly became uncertain and frightening. The months that followed had been a blur of hospital visits, insurance paperwork, and trying to maintain normalcy for Sofia while watching the woman he loved fight a battle that grew more difficult each day. Mike had taken a second job working weekends at a local auto repair shop, using skills learned from his father to earn extra money for medical expenses that insurance wouldn't cover. He would drop Sofia off at his neighbor Mrs. Park's apartment every Saturday morning, work 10-hour shifts rebuilding engines and fixing transmissions, then pick up his daughter and spend Sunday afternoons reading to her or helping her with art projects that provided a creative outlet for emotions she couldn't yet express in words. Maria had insisted on spending her remaining energy teaching Sofia everything she could about drawing and painting, recognizing her daughter's natural artistic talent and wanting to nurture that gift even as her own strength faded. Their small apartment had become filled with canvases, sketch pads, and art supplies that Maria ordered online during her better days, creating a treasure trove of creative materials that would continue inspiring Sofia long after her mother was gone. The bedroom walls displayed an evolving gallery of Sofia's work, progressing from simple finger paintings to increasingly sophisticated compositions that captured the beauty Maria wanted her daughter to see in the world. When Maria passed away, on a quiet Tuesday morning in early spring, Mike found himself responsible for raising Sofia, alone while processing his own grief and maintaining the emotional stability that his daughter desperately needed. The financial pressures were overwhelming. Medical bills continued arriving months after the funeral, and Mike realized he needed steady employment with comprehensive health insurance to protect Sofia from ever experiencing the kind of medical crisis that had devastated their family. The position at Summit Financial Tower offered exactly what he needed: decent pay, excellent benefits, and the security of working for a stable company that wouldn't disappear during economic downturns. Sofia Rodriguez had inherited her mother's artistic eye and her father's quiet determination, creating a combination that produced artwork remarkable for someone her age. Her drawings captured details that adults overlooked: the way sunlight created patterns on their apartment wall, the expression in Mrs. Park's eyes when she talked about her grandchildren in Korea, the geometric beauty of the downtown skyline visible from their window. She approached each piece with the focused concentration of someone much older, losing herself completely in the creative process until Mike had to remind her about dinner or bedtime. Their daily routine had evolved around Sophia's school schedule and Mike's work responsibilities, creating a comfortable rhythm that provided structure and predictability in their lives. Mike would wake Sophia at 6:30 each morning, helping her choose clothes that matched and braiding her hair while she ate breakfast and chattered about her plans for the day. He walked her to Riverside Elementary School before catching the bus downtown to Summit Financial Tower, where he arrived by 7:15 to begin his maintenance rounds before the building filled with office workers. The basement maintenance office, where Mike spent most of his working hours, was a world unto itself, filled with monitors, control panels, and diagnostic equipment that connected him to every system throughout the 40-story building. He could adjust temperature settings for individual floors, monitor water pressure in dozens of restrooms, track electrical loads as computers and equipment powered up each morning, and respond to maintenance requests that ranged from broken coffee machines to sophisticated network failures that required coordination with specialized technicians. Mike took pride in understanding how all these systems worked together to create the seamless environment that Summit Financial's employees expected but rarely thought about. The heating and cooling systems that maintained comfortable temperatures despite Denver's extreme weather fluctuations, the elevators that transported hundreds of people efficiently between floors, the security systems that protected valuable assets and sensitive information. All of these complex technologies required constant attention and preventive maintenance to function properly. His colleagues in the maintenance department respected Mike's technical knowledge and his willingness to tackle difficult problems that others avoided. When expensive equipment malfunctioned or building systems failed unexpectedly, Mike was usually the person they called to diagnose the problem and develop a solution. He had earned a reputation for creative problem solving and for staying calm under pressure, qualities that made him invaluable during emergencies when quick thinking could prevent minor problems from becoming major disasters. The work provided more than just financial security for Mike and Sophia. It gave him a sense of purpose and professional accomplishment that helped offset the loneliness and grief that still surfaced unexpectedly. He enjoyed the intellectual challenge of understanding complex systems and the satisfaction of fixing problems that improved other people's daily experiences. Even routine maintenance tasks carried meaning when he remembered that his diligence contributed to the safety and comfort of hundreds of people who trusted the building systems to work properly. Sophia's artistic abilities had continued developing throughout the 3 years since Maria's death, progressing from the simple drawings that had filled their refrigerator to sophisticated pieces that amazed her teachers and classmates. Her bedroom had become a working art studio where she experimented with different media and techniques, creating landscapes inspired by family trips to Colorado's mountains, portraits of neighbors and friends that captured personality traits beyond their physical appearance, and abstract compositions that expressed emotions and ideas she couldn't communicate through words alone. Mike often found Sophia working on art projects when he returned from work each evening, completely absorbed in whatever she was creating and eager to show him her progress. He had learned to ask specific questions about her artistic choices and techniques, encouraging her to think critically about her work and helping her articulate what she was trying to achieve through each piece. These conversations had become precious bonding time that strengthened their relationship while nurturing Sophia's creative development. Mrs. Eleanor Park, their elderly Korean neighbor, had become an unofficial grandmother figure in Sophia's life, providing after-school care and cultural wisdom that enriched both father and daughter. Mrs. Park had immigrated to America 40 years earlier with limited English and had built a successful life through determination and hard work that Mike deeply respected. She understood the challenges of raising children without extended family support, and had quietly stepped into the gap left by Maria's death, offering practical help and emotional support without ever making Mike feel like he owed her anything in return. The small apartment they called home reflected both their limited budget and Sophia's artistic influence, with her paintings and drawings displayed prominently alongside family photographs and Maria's personal belongings that Mike couldn't bear to pack away. The space was clean and organized despite its modest size, filled with love and creativity that transformed their financial limitations into something that felt rich and meaningful. Sophia had never complained about their circumstances or expressed envy toward classmates whose families had more material resources, seeming to understand instinctively that their wealth lay in their connection to each other and their shared memories of Maria. Mike's evening routine included helping Sophia with homework, preparing simple dinners that they ate together while discussing their respective days, and spending time on art projects that had become a way for them to process their experiences and emotions. He had learned to appreciate Sophia's artistic perspective on the world around them, seeing familiar things through her eyes and discovering beauty in details he had previously overlooked. These quiet domestic moments provided the foundation for their relationship and created the emotional security that Sophia needed to thrive despite the absence of her mother. Rachel Thompson's world existed in stark contrast to the intimate warmth of Mike and Sophia's small apartment, though her sprawling mansion in Cherry Hills Village often felt far lonelier than their modest two-bedroom home ever could. The 7,000-square-foot house sat on 3 manicured acres behind electronic gates that ensured privacy while simultaneously creating isolation from the community beyond their property lines. Every room had been professionally decorated, with furniture and artwork selected not for personal meaning, but for their ability to convey success and sophisticated taste to visitors who rarely came and never stayed long. The master bedroom suite, where Rachel spent countless sleepless nights, was larger than most people's entire apartments, featuring a sitting area with panoramic mountain views, a walk-in closet organized like a high-end boutique, and a bathroom equipped with amenities that rivaled luxury resorts. Yet despite these material comforts, Rachel often found herself feeling like a guest in her own home, surrounded by beautiful objects that held no emotional significance and spaces designed for entertaining that rarely hosted genuine friendship or meaningful conversation. Her daily schedule revolved around activities that filled time without providing fulfillment, a carefully choreographed routine of personal trainers, spa appointments, charity committee meetings, and social obligations that kept her busy while leaving her feeling purposeless and disconnected from anything that mattered. She woke each morning in her custom-made Italian bed, selected clothing from a wardrobe that could stock a department store, and spent hours maintaining the physical appearance that society expected from the wife of a successful CEO, all while questioning whether anyone would notice or care if she simply disappeared from her own life. James Thompson had built Summit Financial into one of Denver's most successful investment firms through relentless focus on profit margins and client acquisition, qualities that had made him wealthy, but had gradually eroded his capacity for personal relationships. He left their mansion before Rachel woke each morning and returned long after she had eaten dinner alone, communicating primarily through text messages about schedule changes and social commitments that required their joint appearance. Their marriage had become a business partnership focused on maintaining their public image rather than nurturing emotional intimacy or shared goals. The emotional distance between Rachel and James had developed gradually over their 8 years of marriage, beginning with his increasing work demands and her growing realization that she had sacrificed her own ambitions to support his career advancement. She had abandoned her plans to become an elementary school teacher, convincing herself that James needed a wife who could focus entirely on supporting his professional success and managing their social obligations, instead of finding purpose in this role. Rachel had discovered that being professionally dependent on someone else's achievements left her feeling invisible and increasingly resentful. Their conversations had become limited to logistics and appearances, discussing upcoming social events, household maintenance issues, and financial decisions without ever addressing the growing emotional void between them. James seemed content with their arrangement as long as Rachel continued fulfilling her expected functions, attending corporate events as his polished companion, managing their home's domestic operations, and maintaining the social connections that enhanced his business. Relationships. Rachel's attempts to discuss her feelings of isolation and purposelessness were met with suggestions that she find new hobbies or volunteer commitments, as if her dissatisfaction were a minor problem that could be solved through better time management. The Cherry Hills community where they lived consisted primarily of other wealthy couples, whose relationships seemed equally hollow beneath their expensive facades. Rachel attended charity luncheons where women discussed vacation destinations and interior decorating projects while carefully avoiding any topics that might reveal genuine emotions or personal struggles. She participated in tennis matches and book clubs that served more as social networking opportunities than authentic friendships, maintaining relationships that were pleasant but superficial, built on shared economic status rather than common interests or values. Rachel's isolation had intensified over the past year as she watched former college friends posting pictures on social media of their children's school events, family vacations, and career achievements that reflected personal passion rather than financial obligation. She found herself envying women who complained about hectic schedules, filled with soccer practices and parent-teacher conferences, recognizing that their exhaustion came from meaningful engagement with life rather than the hollow fatigue that resulted from filling days with activities that provided no emotional nourishment. The mansion's many empty rooms had been furnished and decorated according to the latest design trends, creating spaces that photographed beautifully for the occasional magazine feature about successful Denver couples, but felt cold and unwelcoming for actual daily living. The formal dining room with its antique table seating 12 people had been used for actual meals perhaps 6 times in the past year, primarily for business entertaining where Rachel served as hostess while James conducted informal negotiations with clients and colleagues. The library with its leather-bound books and expensive artwork provided an impressive backdrop for video calls, but contained few titles that reflected Rachel's actual reading interests. Her attempts to create warmth and personality within their home had been subtly discouraged by James, who preferred the impersonal elegance that impressed business associates and maintained their property's resale value. Rachel's suggestions about converting one of the unused bedrooms into an art studio or reading room had been dismissed as unnecessary expenses that would reduce the home's broad market appeal. Even her desire to adopt a pet for companionship had been rejected due to concerns about potential damage to expensive furniture and the inconvenience of pet care during their frequent business travel. The country club where Rachel spent many of her afternoons represented the social pinnacle of Denver's wealthy elite, offering perfectly maintained golf courses, tennis courts, and dining facilities that provided a refined environment for networking and leisure activities. Yet Rachel found the club's atmosphere increasingly suffocating, filled with conversations about stock portfolios and real estate investments that reminded her constantly of her own lack of independent financial identity. She participated in CUF, the Women's Tennis League, and attended the monthly charity planning meetings without forming genuine friendships with women whose primary interests seemed to center on maintaining their social positions. Rachel's educational background had prepared her for a teaching career that would have provided daily interaction with children, intellectual challenges, and the satisfaction of contributing to young people's development. She had graduated summa cum laude with a degree in elementary education and had completed her student teaching requirement with enthusiasm and natural ability that suggested a promising career ahead. Meeting James during her final semester had derailed these plans, as his ambitious timeline for marriage and family seemed incompatible with the demands of beginning a teaching career. The decision to abandon her professional aspirations had seemed reasonable at the time, particularly when James's business success accelerated beyond their initial expectations, and his income made her salary financially unnecessary. Rachel had convinced herself that supporting James's career while managing their home and social obligations would provide fulfillment and purpose equivalent to classroom teaching. Instead, she had discovered that being financially dependent on someone else's achievements, no matter how substantial, left her feeling like an accessory to James's success rather than a partner in building something meaningful together. Her days now followed a predictable pattern that filled time without providing genuine satisfaction or personal growth. Morning yoga sessions at the country club were followed by shopping excursions to Denver's upscale retail districts, where she purchased clothing and accessories that satisfied temporary impulses but added nothing meaningful to her already overflowing closets. Lunch meetings with other wives focused on planning charity events that raised substantial money for worthy causes, while serving primarily as social showcases for their organizing committee's wealth and influence. Afternoons were often spent at the spa, receiving treatments designed to maintain the physical appearance that society expected from women in her position, or at the hair salon where her stylist created the effortless-looking waves that actually required significant time and money to achieve. These beauty maintenance routines consumed hours each week while providing minimal genuine pleasure or relaxation, feeling more like professional obligations than personal indulgences. Rachel's evenings were typically spent alone in their mansions, various rooms, reading novels that transported her temporarily to different worlds, while James worked late at his office or attended business dinners that didn't require spousal participation. She often found herself eating solitary meals in their gourmet kitchen, while looking out at the mountain views that had once excited her, but now seemed like beautiful prison walls that separated her from a more authentic existence. The trapped elevator had become an unexpected catalyst for genuine human connection, stripping away the social barriers and artificial pretenses that normally prevented people, like Rachel and Mike, from truly seeing each other as complete individuals rather than economic stereotypes. As Mike worked methodically to free the tangled cable that was preventing the elevator's descent, Rachel found herself sharing thoughts and feelings with a stranger that she had never expressed to anyone in her carefully controlled social circle. Their conversation had evolved beyond the immediate crisis to explore deeper questions about purpose, fulfillment, and the different ways that people find meaning in their daily lives. Rachel discovered that Mike's work as a maintenance technician involved far more intellectual complexity and personal responsibility than she had ever imagined, requiring expertise in multiple technical disciplines and the ability to solve problems under pressure while maintaining absolute attention to safety protocols that protected hundreds of people. Mike described the satisfaction he derived from understanding how complex building systems work together, the pride he felt in preventing problems before they occurred, and the sense of accomplishment that came from fixing challenging technical issues that other people couldn't diagnose. His work provided tangible results that improved other people's experiences, even though most of the building's occupants never realized how much skill and dedication was required to maintain the comfortable environment they took for granted. Rachel found herself envying Mike's clear sense of purpose and the direct connection between his efforts and their positive impact on other people's lives. She realized that despite all her material advantages, she had never experienced the kind of professional satisfaction that Mike described, having never committed herself fully to work that challenged her abilities or contributed meaningfully to something larger than her own comfort and social status. The conversation revealed aspects of Mike's character that impressed Rachel far more than the wealth and social connections that typically defined her interactions with other people. His dedication to raising Sophia alone while maintaining demanding Work responsibilities demonstrated a strength and selflessness that contrasted sharply with the self-centered attitudes prevalent in her usual social environment. His willingness to sacrifice personal comfort and leisure time to provide educational opportunities and emotional security for his daughter reflected values that Rachel had lost sight of in her own life. Mike spoke about Sophia's artistic talents with a combination of pride and wonder that revealed his deep love for his daughter and his commitment to nurturing her gifts, despite their limited financial resources. He described spending his rare free time researching art programs and educational opportunities that might help Sophia develop her abilities, often using money they could barely afford to purchase supplies and materials that supported her creative development. Rachel was moved by Mike's stories about Sophia's artwork and her mature perspective on life despite her young age. The 7-year-old had apparently developed an artistic style that captured emotional truths beyond her chronological understanding, creating pieces that expressed grief, hope, and resilience with sophistication that amazed adults who encountered her work. Her teachers at Riverside Elementary had suggested that Sophia might benefit from advanced art instruction, but such programs were financially beyond Mike's reach, even though he recognized their potential value. As Mike finally succeeded in untangling the cable and began the careful process of lowering the elevator to the 29th floor, Rachel experienced an unexpected surge of disappointment that their conversation would soon end. The enforced intimacy of their situation had created a connection that felt more authentic than most of the relationships in her regular life, and she realized she wanted to continue learning about Mike's perspective on work, family, and finding meaning in circumstances that others might consider limiting. The elevator's gradual descent was accompanied by mechanical sounds that indicated the successful resolution of the technical crisis, but Rachel found herself reluctant to return to her normal routine of empty social obligations and meaningless activities. Her brief glimpse into Mike's world had highlighted the purposelessness of her own existence and made her question whether the material security of her marriage was worth the emotional isolation and intellectual stagnation that accompanied it. Mike's voice came through the communication system with updates on their progress and reassurance that they would reach the 29th floor within minutes. His calm professionalism throughout the emergency had demonstrated competence and reliability that Rachel found deeply attractive, not romantically but as human qualities that seemed increasingly rare in her social environment where people's worth was measured primarily by their financial success rather than their character or contributions to others' welfare. When the elevator finally reached the 29th floor and the doors opened to reveal Mike standing in the hallway with his toolkit and safety equipment, Rachel experienced a moment of cognitive dissonance as she tried to reconcile the capable, thoughtful person she had been talking with for the past hour with the uniformed maintenance worker that social conditioning had taught her to overlook or dismiss as unimportant. Mike Rodriguez appeared older than Rachel had expected, with graying temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent working in challenging conditions and shouldering responsibilities that would have overwhelmed many people. His work clothes were clean, but showed signs of the physical demands of his job, and his calloused hands revealed the manual labor component of maintaining a modern office building's complex systems. Yet his eyes showed intelligence, kindness, and quiet strength that immediately explained the confidence and competence Rachel had heard in his voice during their extended conversation. He moved with the purposeful efficiency of someone accustomed to working under pressure, quickly checking the elevator's mechanical systems to ensure that her exit would be completely safe before stepping back to allow her to leave the confined space that had become the setting for an unexpectedly meaningful human connection. Rachel stepped out of the elevator on somewhat unsteady legs, her expensive heels clicking against the marble flooring as she tried to process the contrast between her elegant appearance and the maintenance worker who had just rescued her from what could have been a truly dangerous situation. She carried the takeout bag from Romano's restaurant that had cooled during the emergency, a reminder of her original purpose in visiting James's office and the routine domestic gesture that had led to this transformative experience. The 29th floor executive offices buzzed with activity as Summit Financial's employees continued their daily routines, most of them unaware that a potentially serious emergency had just been resolved in their building. Rachel noticed several people glancing curiously at Mike and his equipment, their expressions showing the mixture of mild interest and unconscious dismissal that maintenance workers typically received from white-collar professionals who benefited from their expertise without acknowledging their value. Mike began packing his tools with the same methodical care he had displayed throughout the rescue operation, each instrument returning to its designated place in his toolkit with precision that reflected years of experience and professional pride. He performed a final safety check of the elevator systems before certifying that normal operations could resume, taking responsibility for ensuring that no other passengers would face similar problems due to lingering mechanical issues. Rachel found herself reluctant to simply walk away from Mike after sharing such an intense and meaningful conversation, but she struggled to find appropriate words to express her gratitude without sounding condescending or presumptuous. The social protocols of her usual environment had not prepared her for interacting as equals with someone whose economic circumstances differed so dramatically from her own, despite his obvious intelligence and competence. "Thank you," she finally managed to say, the simple words carrying more genuine emotion than most of her carefully crafted social interactions. "Not just for getting me out of there, but for keeping me calm and making me feel safe. You probably saved my life, and I don't even know how to properly thank you for that." Her voice carried sincere appreciation, tinged with embarrassment at her inability to adequately express the significance of what Mike had done for her. Mike's response was characteristically modest and professional, deflecting attention from his heroic actions while emphasizing that ensuring passenger safety was simply part of his job responsibilities. He seemed uncomfortable with Rachel's praise, not because he didn't deserve recognition, but because his focus remained on completing his work properly rather than receiving appreciation for doing what he considered his basic professional duty. Their brief exchange in the hallway felt awkward compared to the natural flow of conversation they had maintained during the emergency, as social conventions and economic differences reasserted themselves in ways that had been irrelevant while Rachel was trapped and Mike was focused on rescuing her. The artificial barriers that typically separated people from different social classes began rebuilding themselves automatically, threatening to erase the authentic connection they had discovered during the crisis. Rachel watched Mike disappear into the elevator shaft to complete his final safety inspections, his professional responsibilities requiring continued attention even after the immediate emergency had been resolved. She stood alone in the executive hallway, still holding the bag of now cold Italian food and trying to process an experience that had challenged many of her assumptions about social hierarchies, personal worth, and the different ways that people contribute meaning and value to the world around them. The conversation with Mike had planted seeds of discontent with her current lifestyle that Rachel suspected would continue growing long after the immediate drama of the rescue had faded from memory. His obvious fulfillment in work that challenged his abilities and contributed to other people's welfare contrasted sharply with her own aimless existence, highlighting questions about purpose and authenticity that she had been avoiding for years. As Rachel made her way to James's corner office to deliver the lunch that had initiated this unexpected adventure, she found herself seeing the executive floor's luxurious environment through different eyes. The expensive artwork, premium furniture, and sophisticated technology that had always impressed her now seemed somehow hollow compared to the genuine competence and quiet dignity that Mike had displayed during their emergency interaction. James Thompson looked up from his computer screen with mild irritation as Rachel entered his office, his expression suggesting that her unscheduled appearance was disrupting important work that couldn't be interrupted for domestic matters. His desk was covered with financial reports and contract documents that represented millions of dollars in potential revenue, the kind of high-stakes business decisions that had built their wealth, but increasingly seemed disconnected from anything that mattered in terms of human welfare or genuine accomplishment. Rachel placed the takeout bag on James's desk and began explaining about the elevator emergency, but she quickly realized that his attention remained focused on his computer screen rather than on her account of what had been a genuinely frightening and transformative experience. His perfunctory responses and obvious impatience to return to his work highlighted the emotional distance that had developed between them, making her feel like an unwelcome interruption rather than a wife sharing an important experience with her husband. The contrast between James's dismissive attitude and Mike's careful attention during their extended conversation struck Rachel with unexpected force, making her realize how long it had been since anyone had listened to her with genuine interest or concern. James's success had been built partly on his ability to prioritize financial opportunities over personal relationships, a focus that had generated substantial wealth but had gradually eroded his capacity for emotional intimacy and authentic human connection. Rachel left James's office feeling more alone than she had while trapped in the elevator with only Mike's voice for company. The rescue experience had reminded her what it felt like to be heard, understood, and valued as a complete person rather than as an accessory to someone else's achievements. The memory of Mike's kindness and competence would continue influencing her thoughts long after she returned to the familiar emptiness of her daily routine. As she walked through Summit Financial's elegant lobby toward the parking garage where her Mercedes waited, Rachel found herself wondering about Sophia's artwork and Mike's evening routine, imagining the warmth and authenticity of their small apartment compared to the cold luxury of her own mansion. The elevator emergency had created an unexpected window into a different way of living that prioritized relationships and personal growth over material accumulation and social status. The drive home to Cherry Hills Village gave Rachel time to reflect on how a mechanical failure had accidentally revealed the emotional failures in her own life, showing her possibilities for meaning and connection that she had sacrificed in pursuit of financial security and social acceptance. Mike's example had demonstrated that fulfillment could be found in circumstances she had been taught to consider limiting, while her own privileged position had somehow led to isolation and purposelessness that no amount of money seemed able to remedy. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.